Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm going to do my talk on women's consent to surrogacy. One of the arguments used to support surrogacy is the freedom of the surrogate mother to decide what to do with their own body. In this brief intervention, I will argue, firstly, that surrogate mothers' consent is not valid since they are subject to extreme conditions of vulnerability that nullify their freedom. And secondly, that even if made a free consent by renting their wombs, surrogate mothers are losing their freedom and exposing themselves to a practice that goes against their human dignity. So first, I will start with the question, why surrogate mothers' consent is not valid? Most of the women who give consent to become surrogate mothers come from poor countries. They are usually women in vulnerable situations, in state of need, poverty, and with social, emotional, family, and economic pressure. The main clients of the surrogacy industry are couples from Europe, and among its destinations, India has been the main country providing this service, together with Thailand, the state of Tabasco in Mexico, Russia, Ukraine, and Cambodia. When consent is obtained, because the woman is subjected to economic pressure, because she is in a situation of economic dependence or subordination that makes her especially vulnerable, so that the alternative to accepting the contract is to live in misery, and such consent is not free. There is no freedom when the decision is conditioned by poverty, nor is there freedom for the woman who, in cases of altruistic surrogacy, may be compelled to undergo medical treatment by the psychological and emotional pressures of the family environment. Freedom is a very slippery concept, and it must be taken seriously. We can ask ourselves whether we can really speak of an autonomous choice when a person is in such a situation of poverty and vulnerability. This casts doubt on the surrogate's mother's freedom of consent. Second, even if there is a free consent, by renting their wombs, surrogate mothers are losing their freedom and exposing themselves to a practice that goes against their human dignity. Surrogate mothers are often forced to submit to contractual requirements such as non-confidentiality of their medical history, subjection to rigorous medical treatments, severe dietary conditions, staying in dormitories under supervision, restrictions on contact with their partners and children during pregnancy, and in some cases they can even be demanded to practice abortions under certain conditions. So the freedom that leads them to become pregnant limits their own freedom. And appealing to contractual freedom in this type of contexts sounds somewhat cynical. The existence of consent does not necessarily mean that human dignity is thereby respected. For instance, although it is a tried example, a French court ruled that the sport of dwarf throwing was in breach of respect for human dignity and banned it, even though the persons of short stature involved consented. In the name of humanity, a society needs to protect the vulnerable people. The fallacy of free and informed consent cannot mask the exploitation that underlines surrogacy, where the current proposal for its regulation only serves the interests of the commissioning or intended parents, and above all, the economic interests of the intermediary agencies, which are the real beneficiaries in this matter. It is possible that, behind the defense of a misunderstood freedom of autonomy of will, we are yielding to the pressure of the intermediary agencies in their struggle to legitimize their business, since the prohibition of making a profit with the gestation of a baby is only towards the surrogate mother, not toward the agencies that facilitate the selection of the surrogate mothers. With the acceptance of surrogacy from the perspective of the surrogate woman, we are faced with a terrible paradox in which freely the surrogate mother gives up her freedom. In short, freedom is lost for the sake of freedom. Thank you very much.